Bigfoot, Dogman, Jersey Devil, and others. Are they real? Figments of our imagination? Or the most cleverly disregarded reality of all time? Come into the cabin. Let's sit down and find out together. Hey guys, welcome back to the cabin. I'm Robbie.
I'm Norman.
Yeah, I am Johnny.
Johnny again.
Ooh. I'm on a roll.
He is. He is. That's like 3 shows in a row that he's been Johnny. And he's known that he was Johnny.
That's awesome.
Good meds are hard to find.
I'm telling you, man. It's a process.
It
always starts with the smallest step. We're here for you, Johnny.
Definitely.
You got to have a support group.
You know, when springtime gets here, we're going to have to get him a pair of dark sunglasses. And a comb.
Oh, I ain't going to go there. I definitely don't have anything to comb with my beard. All right. Well, I've been looking forward to this one for a while, guys.
I know you have. You love anything on this topic.
Yeah, me and Johnny usually get off on a tangent with this anyway, or me and Anthony and me and Doc on DAX Machina, but we're going to be talking about movie monsters tonight. I love movie monsters. Johnny?
Yeah, I have a few favorites.
So, I know Norm usually gets the ball rolling, but I think I will start the ball rolling tonight.
All right.
My favorite movie monster of all time. We kind of talked about this a little bit
we did.
after last show. Godzilla.
Godzilla, I think, is an all-time favorite of somebody in our age group.
Yes.
And maybe some of the new kids coming around now.
I can remember looking forward to Saturday afternoons because there was going to be a Godzilla movie on.
Definitely.
Just about every Saturday afternoon. Sometimes you catch them on Sunday afternoons, but most of the time on Saturday afternoons, you know, you're going to catch a Godzilla movie, and I loved Godzilla movies. That was my childhood. And, you know, you'd be hard-pressed to say that any movie monster was more popular. There's probably some that are as popular, but you're going to be hard-pressed to say there's anything that's more popular than Godzilla. And this is a character that's not even created in America, but it's probably more popular in America, really, than it is in Japan, where it was created.
It's actually one of the most popular monsters there is. When the Japanese created it, it actually took off in the United States. Mm-hmm. Even though it was a Japanese monster, it was a highly popular monster.
And it was not created for, if you're an American, or during the time that it was created, it was not created for the best of purposes for America. Because Godzilla was created as a propaganda piece against nuclear weapons.
Yep.
That's pretty much what the very first Godzilla was about how Godzilla represented the United States. Let's just be honest with it. He was a nuclear power that destroyed Japan. Well, what nuclear power destroyed Japan? We did.
Yeah.
So, but us being stupid Americans, they're like, ooh, cool, big monster. You know, it was a kind of a slap in our face, and we just didn't know it. But over the years, it's kind of morphed into something else. But the first 2 Godzillas were pretty much a slap in the face of the United States, saying, look what you did to us.
Yeah.
But it took off.
What was the year of the first movie?
1954.
I have written down the entire timeline. See, there's different eras. So we'll start off with the eras first. The very first era, the Showa era, went from 1954 to 1975. And there was a total of 16 movies in that era, from 1955 to 1975. Those are the ones that most everybody in our generation have watched. You know, because the very next era is the Heisei era. That started went from 84 to 95. Because so there was a layoff between 75 and 84. There was not another, because the last movie in the Heisei, or the Showa era, rather, was Terror of Mechagodzilla. That was supposed to be the end of Godzilla. And Godzilla at that point had become a kind of a, even though that was probably from Godzilla versus Gigan, probably was where he really started to get more cartoony.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about Godzilla versus Megalon. That's where he was doing the flying drop kick, sliding on his tail, and had the big robot Jet Jaguar. Mm-hmm. yeah, it was getting kind of goofy at that point.
They were running out of material, per
Yeah,
se.
they were, and but I mean, when it went into the Heisei era, they recycled a lot of material. They just used it in a different way. It wasn't the same movie, same storyline, same characters, but not the same storyline.
They included tech.
Yeah, it kind of. I mean, they had already started doing some of that. The first two movies, Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again, those are pretty much completely, totally. Even though that was Showa era, and that was the first of the Showa era, those two movies were completely different than Godzilla King of the Monsters. Godzilla King of the Monsters is where he started being, the Godzilla that everybody has gotten used to. Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again, he was just a force of nature. He wasn't
a monster.
He wasn't really. Yeah, he wasn't really sentient about things. He didn't really, he wasn't protecting the universe. He wasn't. It was just. That's what that slap in the face about nuclear propaganda was. Ceased being propaganda in 1956 when Godzilla King of the Monsters came on. That's when it really started. They said, it's pretty popular. We can make some money off this. So went Godzilla King of the Monsters. Then the very next one in 1962 was King Kong versus Godzilla. That was more the Japanese version of King Kong. They still had to get rights from Paramount, I believe, that had King Kong. Then you go Mothra versus Godzilla in 1964. Also in 1964, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Then 65 was Invasion of the Astro Monster. 1966 was Ibera, Horror of the Deep, or Ebra, I think is how it's actually pronounced. 67 was Son of Godzilla. 68 was Destroy All Monsters. 69, All Monsters Attack. Godzilla vs. Hedorah came out in 71. 72 was Godzilla vs. Gigan, which is one of my favorites.
Yes.
That one's pretty good. Godzilla vs. Megalon, 1973. That's really the one where everybody says the goofiness really set in. It was starting to come in some of those movies, the first, or probably the two or three before that. But Godzilla vs. Megalon's when it really started to say that. Everybody's like, okay, the train's off the rails on this one. Then Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla in 74. Pretty strange plot line on that one. The Terror of Mechagodzilla in 1975, and that is the last movie in the Showa era. So, fast forward to 1984, started the Heisei era. They went back to the drawing board. They're like, okay, and the suit kind of started looking like a frog in the head. It started looking too cute, so they went back and they said, okay, we got to redesign this. So, to me, in the Return of Godzilla in 1984, he started looking more like a ticked off alligator. That's when they changed the head of the costume, made him look a lot more
monstrous.
Yeah, a lot more evil, a lot more menacing looking, and he went back to being a force of nature in these movies. It was no more Godzilla being a hero in at least in the first couple movies. He did go back to Savior of the Earth in a couple of movies after that, but 1984 was when it came back, and it was Return of Godzilla. Then 1985, Godzilla 1985, Godzilla versus Biollante, that's where he kind of started going back to being the big savior of the world. That's the big plant monster.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was 1989. 1991, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. So you notice some of the old characters are coming back. This is, if I'm not mistaken, that Godzilla 1991 or Godzilla versus King Ghidorah 1991 is when they introduced the time travel thing. That's when he was supposed to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he got transformed into what he is now. And then the future space travelers came back, and they had the three little things that ended up.
I forget the name they called the critters.
But basically they were little miniature Ghidorahs, but each of them had one head. So when they took it back to basically take the place of Godzilla when that nuclear blast happened,
they swapped them out.
They swapped them out, and that's when King Ghidorah came.
Was Ghidorah that three-headed Hydra thing?
Yeah. See, you got Ghidorah or Ghidra. There's a difference in pronunciation. Then you got King Ghidorah. Okay, Ghidra was in the Showa era, and King Ghidorah was in the Heisei era. It's pretty much the same monster. They just flashed it up a little bit, changed the origins a little bit. So then after Godzilla versus King Ghidorah in 1992, you had Godzilla versus Mothra, bringing Mothra back. 1993 was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, bringing Mechagodzilla back, changing plot. Totally different storyline. They didn't have the space monkeys or any of that kind of stuff, because it's basically like the Planet of the Apes dressed as astronauts.
Yeah.
That's what the bad guys in the very first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla looked like. Then 1994 was Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. If you remember that, that's the one with the Godzilla had the big crystals coming out of his shoulder. Then in 1995, this was the last movie of the Heisei era, was Godzilla versus Destroya. That was the big one with the big horn that come out of his head.
That's
I
where
think he had wings.
Yeah, that was the death of Godzilla, and then the rebirth of Godzilla.
Okay, then you go into the next one, which was Godzilla Millennium, and in 1999 you had Godzilla 2000, which is kind of a misnomer right there. But anyway, kind of the same thing as Godzilla 1985, Godzilla: The Return of Godzilla. Godzilla 2000 was kind of the same thing as, Godzilla versus Destroyer was supposed to be the last. That was going to be it. But then in 1999, obviously,
every 10, 20 years, they got to bring them back.
Here they come again, and Godzilla 2000 comes out. That's the one that brought Raymond Burr back. He was back in that one, and it was.
I thought it was 1985. Raymond Burr was in.
I'm sorry, you're right. It was 1985. 2000, but they did follow that same kind of formula in Godzilla 2000. So then that was 99. Then in 2000, you had Godzilla versus Megaguirus. Then in 2001, Godzilla and Mothra versus King Ghidorah. So that was his team-up movie with Mothra. And then you had Godzilla against Mechagodzilla in 2002. 2003, you had Godzilla Tokyo SOS.
Oh, I did not like that.
That one was kind of stupid too. But not quite as stupid as the last one. In the Millennium era, Godzilla Final Wars in 2004. That's where Godzilla, all the monsters came. And they even had the 1998 American version in there that they dubbed Zilla. They didn't call it Godzilla. He fought it in Australia and beat it under 10 seconds, I believe.
Yeah.
But Godzilla was pretty OP in that one, and he came back and just like.
That wasn't too bad. They could have tweaked it a little better.
All those Millennium movies look like bad live-action anime. They were way too heavily dependent on CGI, because that was the CGI hotbed, the hot era from '99 to 2004, and they went away from all the practical effects, went away from all the the man in the suit, and they CGI'd everything. Started kind of maybe sort of a little bit in. No, I take it back. 95, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, they still used, the man in the suit still used practical effects. But the Millennium era, that was all CGI. And that's why those movies look so bad. Those are the movies where you got the one and only, you know who I'm talking about, the Ultimate Fighter that was in these movies?
Oh, what was his name?
Oh, Dan Severn Training brought him in. He was big in Japan at this time. Don the Predator Fry.
Okay.
He was in a couple of these Godzilla movies. I love Don Fry. He was a great fighter, but he was not an actor.
Like most of them.
No, Tokyo SOS was okay. It was the Final Wars I didn't like because of the dancing scenes they had in there.
Yeah, all those Millennium. I've watched every Godzilla movie on this list, with the exception of one.
All.
There's only one movie on this list, and I've only seen a few minutes of it, and it's just I didn't like it. We'll get to it. I've seen it multiple times, every movie on this list, like I said, with the exception of one, and I can't stand the Millennium movies. There's only one other movie on here that I like less than the Millennium movies.
I won't watch Final Wars again. I've watched it twice,
So,
and that's it.
After Millennium in 2004, you hit the Reiwa and Legendary. Now, this is kind of what we were talking about last week on our little behind the scenes, our off-camera thing, off audio, whatever you want to call it. Reiwa and Legendary they kind of run simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
because Legendary is the American version. That's what we're in right now.
Right.
The Legendary Godzilla.
I like those.
Yes, that's Godzilla 2014, where they finally gave the U.S. another chance. It noticeably by its absence is Godzilla 1998, which is not on here. Toho does not claim that whatsoever, even though they've still got rights to it. That was the worst representation and presentation of Godzilla. I would rather see the CGI versions than that thing again. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. The one with Matthew Broderick. And,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one I saw.
yeah, that's
Since the 70s.
that is the dumbest movie that ever walked the face of the earth, and
Yes.
that's saying something. Anyway, that's not the movie I'm talking about. I would rather watch that than.
Yeah. I mean, they had Rob Cast.
I take that back. I would still rather watch this one on the Rebel list, but I'm about to get to than 1998. That's probably the least, and I don't even consider that a Godzilla movie.
What was the highlight of that movie? Seeing an eyeball out the hotel window as it went by. That was it.
Well, there was also the eyeball in the subway, in the one with Matthew Broderick.
Yep.
That was
Yeah, that's what I'm
awesome.
talking about.
Yeah.
And the rest of the movie's
Where the
crap,
soldier
because
walks.
you never get to see Godzilla.
Yep. So after Godzilla 2014, this is the one that I don't like. Shin Godzilla.
I don't know. I kind of liked it.
I don't like the fact that they went away and made Godzilla some kind of mutated leech that crawls up out of the harbor and starts mutating into Godzilla. Doesn't look anything like any Godzilla. Granted, neither does the 1998, but it's off the list.
They had to start somewhere again with something.
Yeah, but that's the last one they ever did on that. That's first and last one that they did anything with on that. Probably because the ratings for that one are not very good.
Probably. I mean, they had to try something and see if it would take.
So then next, these next were all Reiwa until towards the end here. After Shin Godzilla in 2016, you got Godzilla Planet of Monsters 2017, Godzilla City on the Edge 2018 Reiwa, Godzilla the Planet Eater Reiwa, and then we get back into the Legendary with Godzilla King of the Monsters. That's the one that brought Ghidorah back. And then the last one, which is the one we just had, was Godzilla vs. Kong in 2021. That's Legendary. That's the MonsterVerse as we know it right now.
Believe it or not, I've not been a big fan of the CGI, and I love CGI. I just couldn't get into it. But
Well-
I love the Legendary stuff.
It's kind of hard to do it on the scale that Legendary is doing it if you don't do CGI. And there's nothing wrong with CGI if you do it right. Mm-hmm. The Millennium movies did everything CGI. Buildings, monsters, spaceships. The only thing that was real in there were the people. And when you've got a movie that's so heavily saturated with CGI, it looks fake. It doesn't, like the Legendary movies, they're CGI obviously because you can't have a 300-foot. I mean, that's just impossible, and it's impossible to have that scale with a man in a suit. But the CGI, the buildings and things like that are real. The surroundings are real. The people are real. Really, the only thing you got that's CGI are the monsters. I mean, granted, some of the aircraft, the bigger aircraft, is probably CGI too. But
I like the new stuff that's coming out by the Americans. I
Yes.
have to admit, they did a good job this time.
Legendary Godzilla has fast become one of my favorite versions.
I'm looking forward to the next one.
So that is Godzilla.
You know who's a close contender to Godzilla?
Let me hear it.
Gamera,
Gamera, yeah, the big turtle.
the flying turtle.
Actually, was actually made by the same parent company.
Mm-hmm.
So Godzilla and Gamera are actually in the same universe, even though they didn't. Now,
They've never fought.
see if you can answer this trivia question though. Who is the monster that has been shared in the cinema with Gamera and Godzilla?
What's his name? It begins with a B.
Well, okay, there's two then. It's Baragon,
Baragon.
and Mothra.
I don't remember seeing Mothra in any of the Gamera movies.
One of the very few first ones that I don't know if I can't remember if she was actually in it or if I just mentioned her, but it was just one of those little Easter eggs to show
No.
that all the universes were
Now, I
shared.
know Mothra's always crossed over with Godzilla movies, and
Or maybe it was that they mentioned Gamera in one of the Mothra movies, because Mothra's got several of her own standalone movies.
Yeah,
It may have been that.
it might have been that. 'Cause-
One of them was mentioned in the other one's movie. Let's put it that way.
Mothra was in a lot of the Godzilla movies. Had one standalone movie in the early 50s or 60s, and then later on they did 3 in the 80s. I think they did 3 Mothra movies. And that was the last of it. Gamera had 8 movies. Their very last one sucked. Everybody did not like it. Then they did 4 Gamera movies, and there's talk of a 5th one coming out here pretty soon. But Gamera was built for children as a children's monster.
Mm-hmm.
And Mothra is supposed to be the symbol of the Earth, the planet monster. You know, one that represented Earth, rebirth, hope. That's what that was. Do you know the most famous movie monster creator
Well,
in the U.S.?
in the U.S., I don't know if you would classify him as a monster creator, but Ray Harryhausen was very, very
That's
with
the
the
one.
with the stop motion and things like that. I mean,
Exactly.
he did the giant claw. He did the spider and the big tarantula.
You know what his best and most famous movie was?
He's done so many. I don't know which.
Them.
That with the ants.
About the ants. That because of the way they did the giant ants, they actually built giant ants, and the mechanism for doing them to make them work and the whole nine. That was his pinnacle. That was his best movie.
Most of the guy who did the stop motion for Wrath of the Titan, or the old Clash of the Titans movie, the 1980s, he trained under Ray Harryhausen.
Yes, he was a student.
Most everybody that has done stop motion in cinemas, especially in the United States, I'm sure probably worldwide too, is either trained under him or trained with somebody who trained under him. I mean, he is.
They were cool. The ants, the spiders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love those old stop motion.
Oh, I love those movies myself. They're just
The old Sinbad movies and with the big minotaurs. There's just something in the the old dinosaurs and Valley of the Guanji. All the ones with the
Jason and the Argonauts.
yeah, all those that there again goes back to those Saturday afternoons watching movies like that where you see those old stop motion.
and some of the premise. Well, when them, what was the one about the giant locust? I forget the name of that. The premise behind that was nuclear power.
It wasn't a swarm, was it?
Yeah,
Huh?
I think
The
you're
Swarm?
right. The Swarm.
Swarm was about bees. That was I forget the name of it, but it had to do with nuclear energy, because the locust ate irradiated wheat that had been contaminated with radiation. There was 2 tarantula movies now.
Oh, there's been a lot of tarantula movies.
I know, but black and white.
There was
The spider, the tarantula was one. The other one was the giant spider against the world or something.
yeah, but there was another one. They weren't really giant spiders, but there was another one with William Shatner in it.
Arachnia.
He wasn't in Arachnophobia. That was Jeff Daniels was in Arachnophobia. But this was like a 70s movie. Then obviously there's 8-Legged Freaks, which is
Yeah.
goofy as all get out. But then you got, like you said, Arachnophobia, which was
Yeah, that's it. Beginning of the end.
so.
1957.
Yeah, all these old black and white monster movies, and we hadn't even really hit the most famous of the black and white monster movies. Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman,
The various
the Mummy,
Wolfmen, the Mummy.
Johnny's favorite, the Creature.
Tons of the. Is there anything that didn't have Boris Karloff like just shoved off in the middle of it?
I think either Boris Karloff or Claude Rains. I can't remember which one of
Exactly.
them had.
Boris Karloff. What was the
Yeah,
other one?
One of
Claude
them-
Rains played.
Claude Rains or Boris Karloff one. I can't remember which one played every single one of them of the monsters. One of those two, and I can't remember
Well,
which
Boris did the Mummy, and of course Frankenstein. He did something else. He didn't have nothing to do with the creature, but
Well, I'm talking about of the Mummy, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, Wolfman. Maybe not played but had been in every one of the movies. As
probably Claude. I think he played a priest in one movie. He played a doctor in another movie. He played a distraught father.
well, he was the Invisible Man too.
You know anything about Nashville? Mm-hmm. You have studio musicians that are on everybody's albums. Mm-hmm. Claude Rains was a studio musician in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a good way.
He was a floater.
That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, United States did a lot of creature features with insects for a while because they could not get, with the exception of King Kong, really could not create a creature feature with monsters per se.
Well, you look at the ones that we tried, with the exception of King Kong, and not just, let's just say North America, or let's just say the Western culture, put it that way, because you got England did that one.
Behemoth and Conga.
Yeah, those were.
Gorgo.
I'm talking about the one with the big lizard type creature that England did.
Behemoth was one.
Oh.
Another one was Gorgo. Those are two monsters that I can tell you right off the top of my head because I own both of them.
Are these still down to Godzilla thing?
Yeah, huge terrestrial type monsters.
You know, Gorgo was a creature pulled out of the Irish Sea. They took it to London and turned out it was a baby, and Mama followed.
Ooh.
Yeah. The other one was like a brontosaurus with a heat ray that came up the River Thames. Behemoth was that one. That was those two I know of. So United States did a creature from 20,000 Leagues, I think it was.
Yeah, creature from 20,000 Leagues. That was a giant squid.
Yeah, that was their that creature came from the North Pole, basically. Swam all the way down, attacked New York City. Then they did. What was the one about the spaceship from Venus? 20,000 miles from Venus or something. The creature was from Venus and grew large and.
Well, there's the
20,000.
The Forbidden Planet had a big red energy type monster.
Yeah. So then it was 20 million miles from Venus, I think it was, or something similar. Then we had a lot of the insect monsters. We had the Blob. That's a famous movie for monsters.
That's one of the very few remakes that actually did
pretty good.
Did good.
Yeah.
You remember who was in the first Blob, don't you?
Steve Martin in it? I mean, not Steve Martin, Steve McQueen.
Yes. One of his first roles.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie Tarantula, do you know who played one of the pilots that was blowing up the tarantula? Clint Eastwood.
Really?
He was he had a cameo role as a pilot in that movie. That was one of his first roles.
He was in one of the creature films too back in '55.
Let's see. Let's just look at some of these. We've got from 1954, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right.
In '55 was Revenge of the Creature.
Bride of Frankenstein was in 35. Wolfman, 1941. King Kong was in 1933.
Yep.
Frankenstein was 1931. Dracula was 1931.
King Kong was remade a couple times.
Yeah, King Kong's been remade a lot.
Both as a primary and a B-rated.
1933 was The Invisible Man. Nosferatu was 1922.
Wow.
Yeah, that was actually the very first one.
And the very first monster movie was called The Golem that came out in Germany in
Another
1915.
trivia. Does anybody remember the name of the guy who played Nosferatu?
No, I don't.
Max Schreck.
That's
he was
what
German.
It was. Yep. And he was a creepy, very little makeup needed kind of guy.
He was a natural for the role.
I think they only put the teeth on him. I think that's the only thing they did. That was the one where the fangs with the two front teeth, and they weren't spaced out to the inside.
Kind of like in Salem's Lot. They kind of similar.
Let's see what else we got here. Another sort of prophecy. Well, that's the name of the movie. Monster movie was The Prophecy. That was kind of a cult classic from 1979. Some other ones. House of Dracula. Now, House of Dracula, that's a good one to talk about because that was the one that had all of them together. That was really your first, what do you call them nowadays? When like your Avengers, where you got everybody from all these different movies that come
compilation
together.
movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
The House of Dracula was the first one. Had Frankenstein's monster, Wolfman, Dracula. All the most famous monsters were in that one movie, and that was the first one.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's a good one. I've seen it. It's pretty good.
I probably saw it once in my youth.
If I see it, I'll know if I've seen it before.
1945 is when it came out. It's a good one. It's worth watching. Another big Japanese kaiju that we missed, Rodan.
Rodan is awesome.
1956. We already mentioned the Blob. That came out in 1958. Revenge of the Creature, 1955. That's the one where they were at the
Wiki Watchy.
Yeah, the
Coral Beach,
the little oceanographic park or whatever, something like SeaWorld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Japanese also did one called H-Man, about these amorphous blobs that were man-shaped that came out of the water and were attacking people. Another thing about nuclear weapons and such.
According to Collider, let's see, the top 10 classical Universal monster movies is rated by Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see what they've got here. I don't know which order they're going in, but I'm just going to read them out. So either at 1, I'm assuming they're going to get 10 to 1. So let's just say number 10 is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Okay. That was funny. I do remember seeing that.
Then 1941's The Wolfman is next. And that was the original with Lon Chaney Jr. And Claude Rains was in that one. Claude Rains played his dad in that movie.
Lon Chaney Jr. was an awesome actor. He could play roles.
He played the Wolfman 2 or 3 times in different movies.
Hunchback of Notre Dame and a few others.
1925's The Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
Then you just mentioned 1923's Hunchback of Notre Dame. Lon Chaney Jr. As Quasimodo. 1931's Dracula, played by Bela Lugosi. He was another icon of those horror movies. The Invisible Man, starring Claude Rains as the Invisible Man. Not sure if he's related to me or not. He spells his last name the exact same way, but...
Distant cousin. Probably a distant cousin.
I doubt it very seriously. Son of Frankenstein in 1939.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. That was... Son of Frankenstein was Boris Karloff's last performance as Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi is also in Son of Frankenstein as Igor. This might not be the best among Karloff's Frankenstein films, but it's definitely still worth checking out. According to Rotten Tomatoes. Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. Dracula, 1931, with Carlos Villarreal. So apparently that was not one of the main ones, not one of... Then you got Frankenstein, 1931, and that would be the number 1, I would say.
You know who else was a good actor for horror monster movies? Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the Hammer horror movies.
Yes.
Same people, or same monsters rather, but that was more in the Italian persuasion, I think. Wasn't it?
I think, spaghetti monster movies, the guys call it.
Like, instead of spaghetti westerns, you had spaghetti monster movies.
Yep.
But yeah, Vincent was in the Hammer horror.
He brought in a special.
He's actually besides Bela Lugosi, he's probably one of the most famous Draculas of all time.
Yeah, I mean, he played. I mean, he had that look. Mm-hmm. He had that aristocratic look for that role.
Yep.
He just had that role.
You know, and not that the movie was it was good, but not that it was one of my favorite vampire movies. But Gary Oldman and Francis Ford Coppola.
Gary Oldman, he was good.
Yeah, and there's stories about that people did not like being around him during the filming of that.
When he was in character?
He stayed in character. Even when it was, they were done shooting for the day, he was still freaking Count Dracula.
The ones I hated was Lee in the 70s.
Oh, Christopher Lee.
In color. I mean, I love Christopher Lee. Great actor.
When you said Vincent Price, that's who I was thinking. I was thinking Christopher Lee. He was in the Hammer horror.
Yes.
Vincent Price did more like Bela Lugosi. So when you said that, for some reason I was already thinking
Christopher Lee did a lot of acting, from science fiction, horror, traditional movies. He was a well-versed actor.
Yeah.
And we cannot mention Count Dracula without mentioning one of the funniest Count Draculas of all time, Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, Dracula, Dead Loving It.
Watched that movie the other day. That is the funniest movie. Renfield, look, I'm drinking wine and eating chicken. Leslie Nielsen was comedy gold.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you got to admit, the best family of monsters was the Munsters.
Yeah. I just hated it.
I haven't seen the new remake.
I watched enough of the reviews of it to know that I didn't want to see it.
I don't think I want to tarnish.
Most of the people who did the reviews said if you liked the TV show, don't watch the movie. So if you've never watched the TV show and you're not nostalgic for the TV show, it can be mildly entertaining. But if you're a fan of the TV show, do not watch it because it will.
I like the TV show. I like the one movie they did.
Now, see, the Addams Family was totally different. I like the shows, but the movies were fairly good. They didn't change it. I mean, they changed it obviously to make it modern in the times they were making it, but in doing so, they didn't.
They didn't destroy the principle.
No, Gomez was Gomez still.
Yeah, and I mean, they threw in the fact that Fester had lost his memory, but that's something that could happen. They didn't fundamentally change how the Addams Family was.
Yeah,
they were still the Addams Family. Everybody was still, still had things, still had Cousin Ed, still had Lurch, still had Morticia, Wednesday, Pugsley.
You still had them doing their things.
The house still looked the same. Everything was still the same. They didn't totally, there's just so much stuff that I've heard that they actually changed that was not even a part.
But what would you classify the Addams Family as? They're not monsters.
Well, Morticia was a vampire.
Was she?
Yeah. And they had a dragon as a pet. No, that's the Munsters that had a dragon as a pet.
Right. And
Under the stairs.
Yeah.
And
Lurch is pretty much Frankenstein.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't know Morticia was a vampire.
Yeah. What else would you classify her as? She pretty much...
Just a hot chick in a sleek dress.
Yes.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. What would you classify Cousin Ed if not a monster?
Well, him, yes. I would classify him
they had a severed hand running around.
I could see an
At
animated...
the very least, they were necromancers.
Yeah.
Because they did talk to the dead people. So.
Or some sort of witches or warlocks.
Well, that was Grandma. She was the witch.
Yeah.
She was your necromancer.
Yeah.
Grandma was.
So, I don't know.
Grandmama.
I don't think they ever really said what they were.
Yeah. Well,
It was very vague.
Obviously, the monsters. Grandpa was a vampire. Herman was Frankenstein's monster, and Lily was a vampire.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then her son was a werewolf.
That's right.
With the dragon under the stairs.
Spot.
Yeah.
But I don't think they ever. But I think I probably just always assumed that Morticia was a vampire. Maybe they were just sick, sadistic people. I don't know, but
I mean, when I watched Wednesday, okay, I liked it. You know, they talked about the school she went to, about some of the folks there being different. There's like the thing with the snakes,
Medusa?
Gorgons,
yeah.
or Medusa, excuse me, Medusas, the Hydes, you know, the other half of a Jekyll and Hyde type people, vampires.
Was it an
sirens.
independent movie just called Wednesday?
no, it's
Yeah.
a
Netflix
series, Netflix or Hulu or something like that.
Netflix. And they talked about different classes of people that were at this school, okay? And so it gave you an idea, but it still didn't tell me what they were.
Well, I'd say they fit into some kind of category as
Something.
they're not normal. Put it that way.
Abby, normal.
So, what's your favorite monster movie, Norm? Or what is your favorite movie monster? Not monster movie monster.
I'd have to say it was Godzilla.
Johnny?
Either the Wolfman or the creature from the Black Lagoon.
I kind of figured he'd be the creature.
I'm a swamp boy.
You know, well, Godzilla is my favorite movie monster of all time but my favorite type of movie monster is werewolves.
But my favorite movie, if you're going to go with what your favorite monster movie was Them, about the giant ants. That's my favorite.
Well, mine's a little bit further forward than that, but Silver Bullet.
Because you like werewolves. Nothing wrong with
Well, Silver Bullet because number one, it's about werewolves. Number two, and he could have done a lot better. He didn't really put as much time and effort into it as he could have. But Stephen King's a great writer.
He is.
His stories are great, and if he'd have put as much time and effort into Silver Bullet, it was a novelette.
It was a good book.
Yeah, I mean it was great,
a good read.
but you could tell that he didn't put all his time. He didn't think it would do anything, and the movie could have been. The movie was great. Don't get me wrong. I love the movie. I saw that movie when I was in 6th grade, you know, and up until that point, I had only seen like Teen Wolf as far as werewolf movies. So that was the first movie that I ever really saw, other than the old.
Where it wasn't a comedy.
Yeah, and I had seen the old 1931, but that stuff wasn't scary.
I've seen the werewolves.
You know, I'd seen the Wolfman and all, you know, House of
Teenage
Dracula and all that
Werewolf
stuff,
and
and
all
Teen
that,
Wolf
yeah.
and all that stuff. I'd never seen a serious, because my parents wouldn't let me watch it. I hadn't seen the Howlings or any of that stuff yet. So 6th grade, we had movie day, and somebody brought that movie in, and my 6th grade teacher let us watch it. You couldn't ever get away with something like that today in school, but we started watching that, and I'm like, okay, werewolves are nothing to be messing around with. I'm sure that's not exactly how I thought it about in my head. I'm sure it was a few other words in there. But
They're not cute and cuddly.
yeah, this is Michael J. Fox up here on the screen.
He's not playing basketball with
He-
with the pompadour.
There's no talking.
Well, you know, you mentioned that. You know, the Japanese did a Frankenstein movie, but he turned into a giant.
Yes, that was where he fought one of the gargantuans that he fought,
No, he fought it.
or some kind of fire breathing dragon or something.
We mentioned the name of the creature earlier. Begins with the B.
Baragon.
Baragon. He fought Baragon.
I remember the movie. I just didn't remember who he faced.
And they did another one, and I watched it not too long ago. See, I've got War with Gargantuans.
Yeah,
Okay?
the green and the
Green and the brown.
Purple.
But see, there's two variations of the English one. Okay, where's War with Gargantuans is also apparently known as War of the Frankensteins. Because they were referring to it instead as Gargantua, they were referring to it as Frankenstein.
yeah. Those kind of got off the rails for me.
A little bit, yeah.
You know,
I just like
Godzilla's-
watching the city get
yeah.
destroyed.
Godzilla was Godzilla, and you know, you can kind of suspend your disbelief, but when you start just dressing two Japanese guys up, painting them one green and one purple, and putting a little prosthetic on their head and making them walk around and throw rocks at it's like, okay. It's like Conga or some of them other goofy movies. It's just, you know, I can watch some really stupid B monster movies. Taylor can tell you I'll sit and watch some of the stupidest things you've ever seen, but I even have to have a breaking point where I'm like, okay, this is just too much for even me.
Yeah.
So, let's see. What other movie? I guess if we're talking about movie monsters, we've got to include the big three.
All right, sure.
Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface. Or Freddy, Jason, and Michael Myers. And throw Leatherface in there, too.
Jeepers Creepers.
Yep, the Creeper.
Ooh.
But
I like those.
That was a fresh twist when it first came out.
Yes, I like that.
but that's he's a little bit different. So let's throw him in another category here in just a second. I do like the Creeper. I want to talk about him. But let's talk about Freddy, Jason, and Michael.
Okay.
That's the big three. That's the horror slasher genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we can definitely classify Freddy as a monster.
Yeah.
He's a dream demon.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, especially from part 5 on, was definitely a monster. He was, zombie Jason when they brought him back in part 5. Of those three, Michael's got the most convoluted backstory because he's got more timelines than the other two put together.
Didn't they do one where it was Jason in space?
Yeah,
Yes.
Jason X. That was the 10th one. They were there's a story behind that too. And seeing as how Friday the 13th is my favorite of the slasher horror genre, I can get you up to speed on that one. So, obviously, Jason's not the killer in part 1. Everybody knows that. It was his mother, Pamela Voorhees. Jason shows up in part 2. So, from part 2, 3... Yes, part 2 and part 3 is Jason. Part 4 is not Jason. Part 4 is Roy. And if you'll notice, when you ever look at the hockey mask, the chevrons on Jason's hockey mask are red. If you ever see the blue chevrons, that's part 4, which is Roy. He was just a copycat killer. That's the one where it's set. Now, Tommy Jarvis is in it, but it's set at this. It's not an insane asylum. It's more like this little ranch for people who have had traumatic things go on. And Tommy gets sent out there. He's pretty much catatonic because this is taking place right after part 3 when him and his sister got trapped in the house and Jason broke in. The one with where he was chopping or hit him with the machete. Machete was stuck in the side of Jason's face and he hit. And the machete slid up his face. It was probably one of the most gory things at the time. You remember?
I never saw it.
Oh.
That's why I have this deer in the headlights look.
I thought you were just trying to remember which one it was.
I was never into.
I've never watched the whole
Okay.
thing.
I was never into the slasher movies.
Part 3 was supposed to be the last one. That was supposed to be the last of the Friday the 13th. So part 4, I don't know if they were going to try to do an anthology like, we can get into that with the Halloween when Season of the Witch, that was supposed to be. Yeah, I know it was dumb.
stupid.
But anyway, I don't know if that's what that was supposed to be, but Roy, basically he was a paramedic. His son was at that like somebody else we know, right, Johnny?
Band-Aid bus.
Yep. And his son was at this place. His son gets killed by one of the other guests,
Residents?
residents, whatever you'll call them. He goes, and his ambulance gets called. He didn't know it was him, and he gets out there and sees him. Well, you never know this, but he flips, so he starts killing these residents, but he's doing it as Jason. But the chevrons are blue, so that's how you can always tell when you see it. So, anyways, fast forward to part 5. That one was a total flop. People were like, this is stupid. You got to bring Jason back. Da da da. So anyway, they brought Jason back. How they bring him back? This is zombie Jason. He was actually dead at the end of 3. Tommy, back again. Different Tommy though. Different guy played. Different person played Tommy Jarvis every time he's been on scene or on screen rather. And part 3 was played by Corey Feldman. Yep. So anyway, different Tommy Jarvis. Him and a buddy of his. They go to where Jason's buried. Tommy's like, I gotta see him. They dig him up. He's gonna burn him. And before he starts burning him, he looks over and sees a metal fence post. He grabs the fence post, starts stabbing Jason, just taking out some anger, aggression, whatever. So as he goes to get the gas, a lightning bolt strikes the fence post that he's left stuck in Jason's chest. Miraculously, the lightning bolt brings him back to life. That's where you get zombie Jason. So obviously Jason was already had average or well above average strength, endurance, pain tolerance, all this stuff. So now that he's zombie Jason, that's where you get the unstoppable killing machine from that movie on. And that was 5. Then 6 up until from parts 2 through 6, a different person played Jason every movie. Part 7, The New Blood, is where Kane Hodder, the most famous person playing Jason. Everybody, when you hear Kane Hodder, you think Jason Voorhees. From part 7, The New Blood on to Jason X, which was right before Freddy versus Jason, which is where everybody was clamoring for, was played by Kane Hodder. I think 7 times maybe. Anywhere from 5 to 7 times. Anyway, so part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. That is the last Friday the 13th movie from Paramount. Paramount sells to New Line Cinema. Well, who does New Line Cinema have? They have Freddy. That's who produced the Nightmare on Elm Street. So, the very first movie for Friday the 13th from New Line Cinemas, after Jason Takes Manhattan, is Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell, which was the dumbest Friday the 13th ever. But that one scene at the very end of the movie is what got everybody started. Because after Jason supposedly dies and goes to hell, his hockey mask is laying on the ground. All of a sudden, this glove with knives on its hand comes up out of the ground right over Jason's mask, grabs the mask, takes it back down on the ground, and you hear Freddy's laugh. And everybody went nuts. Well, that began probably 20 years of development hell, at least. So in between Freddy versus Jason, they needed to have another Nightmare on Elm Street to keep Jason relevant, another Friday the 13th to keep Jason relevant. So that's where Jason X came from, Jason in space. Kind of, sort of detached from the timeline because it's way far into the future. But that was the last time that Kane Hodder played Jason. It is what it is. It's not the worst of the Friday the 13th movies by far. You know, the one right before that takes the cake of that one. I mean, Jason wasn't even Jason in that movie. He was a freaking slug that infected people. If he decided he wanted, he decided he wanted to be you instead of me, he'd, possess you and you'd turn into Jason. Yeah, it was stupid. The guy who directed, I can't remember his name. It was his first movie that he ever directed, and hopefully his last. And he just totally
destroyed it.
Yeah. So then you got the reboot or the remake, which wasn't bad. That was the one that had what's the guy's name?
I've seen Jason vs. Freddy. That wasn't too bad.
Well, the only thing I hated about the Freddy vs. Jason is the way they did Kane Hodder. Everybody wanted, because Kane was the one that everybody loved as Jason. And they didn't bring him back, and they hired Ken Kinstringer, which, if you've watched any of the movies, if you watched, go back and watch Jason Takes Manhattan. There's a scene in a restaurant where Jason is chasing one of the guys. He goes into the restaurant, and there's a guy behind the counter as a cook, a short order cook, that Jason grabs a hold of and throws through a wall or something like that. That's Ken Kinchiker, or however you pronounce his last name. He's a Canadian stuntman and actor. He's the one that actually got to play Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. But the premise for the remake, though, was actually not bad, but it takes it out of the realm of him being a monster and puts it more back into Jason was just kind of like in part 2 where he was just an old redneck with a potato sack on it. It kind of started right there. I mean, he ended up getting the hockey mask, but it was just more like they kind of try to explain away the supernatural part of it.
Yeah.
Is how he moved fast, as he had all these tunnels dug under Camp Crystal Lake and had this elaborate system of bells. So when somebody stepped on a bell, he knew where they were and he could run underneath these. Yeah, it tried to explain too much. It wasn't bad, but it tried to.
They overdid the explanations.
Yeah, and Derek Mears is the one that played Jason, and he did a really good job. He's a really big guy. He's, let's see, I think he's like 6'6", maybe. 6'5", excuse me. And he does a really good job as Jason, but he's a lot slimmer than Kane Hodder or any of the other guys that's played Jason, because Jason's always been big and bulky and strong, walked really slow, and it's that mystique, kind of same thing with Michael Myers. You see Michael Myers and you take off, and then next thing you know, you come around the corner and he's standing in front of you. Jason had that same thing. So when you kind of try to explain some of that away, it takes away from that mystique.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And if you really think about it, you look at none of the remakes really did that good compared to the originals. The Nightmare on Elm Street remake fell flat on its face. I think the Friday the 13th probably did the best of the remakes. I don't think that the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween did good at all. I personally don't like it.
Last one?
No, not the last. The last two that we just got, those were not remakes. Those were continuations of the very first one. Those two or three films, how many? 3, I think we had just.
Where they redid the story?
No, what they did was that was supposed to have taken those caught up from right at the end of Halloween 1. So you take all those other movies in between the end of Halloween 1 and the starting of that movie. All those movies in between that, those are done. Michael Myers got caught right after when Loomis shot him. He fell over the balcony. He kind of got up, went around the fence, and he was arrested and put in the Haddonfield, whatever, penitentiary or the insane asylum, whatever. He had been there until he escaped in the newest movie, Halloween.
But see, supposedly in Halloween 2, he come after the babysitter at the hospital.
Halloween 2 is where they introduced the fact that they were supposed to be related, that they were brother and sister. See, it said in this newest movies that they weren't related. It was just one of them things. He was just crazy, and he just went after him. They say I never said anything in the first movie about them being related. And they said it in the second movies, and everybody's like, what? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, no, it's just...
And then...
See, he died to me in H2O when Jamie Curtis took his head off.
That was supposed to be the definitive end of it. And then there again, like they've done so many times, so many other things, they brought him back and, retconned something and screwed something up. And, it's just...
That's why I just gave up on it.
Well, it comes to a certain point, and you've just got to watch the movies for themselves and not for any kind of continuity, because there's no kind of continuity in any of these.
Even with Hellraiser.
Yeah, and see, now, I've never been a big fan of the Hellraiser movies. The very first one was okay, but there again, once you get past the first one, it's so hard to keep up with. There's so many things that are just like don't make sense. So if you start trying to watch it, and the only one continuity wise that keeps the same sort of continuity throughout and tries to, is Friday the 13th. If you think about it, I mean, you can kind of follow the time up until Paramount loses it and New Line takes over. Once New Line takes over, that's when it really starts getting haywire crazy, because you got Jason goes to hell, then after he goes to hell, he goes to space. Now, how does that happen? And
What's the difference?
And then after he goes to space, all of a sudden he's back down on Earth in the right time frame, fighting Freddy again. I mean, but 1 through 8, at least kind of sort of tries to follow a little bit of a timeline. Obviously, I'm a big Friday the 13th fan, and then after that's Halloween, then Nightmare on Elm Street. Not a big fan of the Hellraiser or the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, because that's another one that's just, it's all over the place when you come to plot and timeline.
I would take Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a slasher movie.
Oh, it's definitely a slasher movie. But even the Scream movies follow more of a timeline than. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's more due to the fact that it's more of a modern movie, and Wes Craven was pretty good at keeping things together.
They Live.
Yeah, really good movie.
Jeepers Creepers.
The Creeper. I would put him more along the lines of something like Freddy. I would say he's a demon, but he's one of those. Was it every 23 years?
Something like that.
Something like that. The Creeper comes back, and
he's got to kill 13 or something.
Yeah,
people.
So it's very, very specific when Freddy can just happen when
whenever
when you go to sleep, or Michael usually tends to come out only on Halloween, but that's every year.
Yeah.
Usually, as long as you don't go to Camp Crystal Lake, you ain't got to worry about Jason. But you can kind of really avoid the Creeper if
you stay out of that one area. Oh no, I think it was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it was a really good concept. Really good concept. The first one was. Now, the second and third one were kind of, especially the one that went back in time, back to.
I like the first one because I watched the first one. That's what made me like it. I didn't particularly care. I watched the second one. I hadn't seen the third and the follow ones, but I liked that truck he drove. And the only way I could figure he learned how to drive was he somehow assimilated the ability from his victims. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You got to just suspend your belief for any of these movies. I mean, Godzilla, Frankenstein versus the Wolfman, any of those movies, you got to really suspend your disbelief. Oh, yeah. But some things, you kind of sort of need some kind of explanation for.
Oh, yeah.
In the first movie there, he is just like Michael Myers. How did he learn to drive in the first movie when he drove off in the car after he threw the nurse out of the car? Because at that point, he'd supposedly been.
He never could drive. I know.
He'd supposedly been in the asylum, and they kind of have an argument about it, but they never show. They never tell how he learned how to drive. Because Loomis and that director were having an argument when he came out, and Loomis said, "So I guess he paid somebody to give him lessons." In well, who in the world? Number one, where to get the money? Number two, who's he paying in an asylum to give him driving lessons?
TV.
This is back in the 70s. It wasn't like they had.
He was watching TV. He was in a room with a TV. You can learn a lot from TV.
Maybe, but it never specifically says that. I mean, some
that would be the simplest answer.
But they don't ever use it though.
I know.
That's the thing. That would have been a simple way. Oh, he was watching the Dukes of Hazzard.
He picked it up from watching something on TV.
He's watching Chips. I mean, because that would have been the popular shows.
Of course, getting used to the steering wheel has been the issue, but
yeah. But like I said, you got to suspend your disbelief watching these movies. But some little small things sometimes need explanation, just a little bit. You don't have to go into a whole lot of backstory. You don't have to, explain everything. Oh, he.
How did he become a brain surgeon? Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I think that monster slasher movies, monster movies, slasher movies, any of that kind of demon possession, those are always going to be around.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's that fear of the unknown. I mean, and for somebody like me, I watch these movies and I'm like, they're almost funny to me in a way, because I'm like, normal people wouldn't do half the stuff in the movies these people do.
That's what I find funny.
Yeah, you're out walking in the woods at night, which not too many people are doing that really, but let's just say you are, and you hear these weird sounds. Most people are not going to go walk over there just to see what it is. Most people are going to be like, okay, that's probably something that I don't want to know what it is, and I'm going the other way. So, yeah.
Or unless you're one of us type groups that does this, but then you generally would go in heavily armed.
I was just about to say, but you're going to be heavily armed in that situation. You're not going to have to. I mean, granted, I don't know even if 458 SOCOM would stop Michael Myers or Jason, but I'd sure.
We'd sure give it a shot.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely give it a shot.
Plenty of shots. But I'll say this: the one thing that's cool about watching Kaiju, as the Japanese movies are known as, is it's relaxing. It can be funny. It's a nice thing to watch with your grandchildren, young nieces and nephews, just as a means of a laughter, enjoyment, Even with from the original one that was in black and white to the new ones coming out, it's means of a simple form of enjoyment. Some of the other movies that the United States, Britain, and Italians put out that were black and white, some early Technicolor, they were awesome just to watch, just for some had comedic value in it, and just as enjoyment, just to burn off steam. I like them. For me, Godzilla movies is a way of relaxing, is tension relief after a bad shift or something.
Yeah.
Watching Tokyo get destroyed half a dozen times.
Well, like I said to me, it represents my childhood. Those Saturday afternoons, early morning, early afternoons, sitting there watching the Godzilla movies. I mean, it's just,
or Cabera or Mothra or Rodan.
Did Bollywood ever do anything with horror movies?
I'm sure they probably did.
I think they might have some out there, but I personally have not seen them. But there's a lot of. I've seen other countries have put out some horror-related movies. There's one from Thailand called Garuda.
Yep.
I think it is. Actually, a pretty good movie, and it's in English. Or it has English capture. It has English dubbing. To be honest, I can't tell you. I've never seen anything from Bollywood, but I'm sure they have some out there. It might be almost a B-rated thing, but it would be something to look forward to. I know they have something similar to Sinbad type movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a popular formula, though. Just some kind of adventure type movie. I mean, because there's so much you can do with,
with a Sinbad type.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be Sinbad. It can just be.
Well, I'm using that as a term.
Well, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to. You don't even have to say, "Hey, this is Sinbad." You can just say, "Hey, this is Fred that goes out and sails in the ocean during this time, and look at all the adventures Fred gets into." I mean, kind of like Cole the Conqueror with Kevin Sorbo.
That was terrible. God, it was terrible.
That was actually.
I liked it.
That was actually supposed to be a Conan movie.
Exactly.
But they couldn't get the rights, and it was hard. But there are so many Conan stories out there, past what those first two movies. And
The first one was good. The second one,
I'm not a fan of Conan the Destroyer.
I like the first one.
The
care for
the
the
best
second
part
one.
of Conan the Destroyer is Olivia DeBeau.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Isn't that still running as a comic, a graphic novel or whatever
Yeah,
you want to call it?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's still out there.
Yeah.
They always had the coolest cover art.
The biggest problem with that is, when Robert E. Howard died, he didn't leave that specifically to anybody, and those things are just tied up in all kinds of litigation as to who's got the right. That's why it took forever to get another Conan movie out of that, and when we got it, we got the one that we got, which wasn't too good. I like Jason Momoa. Don't get me wrong; he's a great actor, but that movie was just god awful.
I like Red Sonja. She was pretty good.
Yeah, but the movie sucked. That was actually supposed to be a Conan movie too, but that's the only one they could get rights to. The only character they could get rights to was Red Sonja, who's a Conan character. But that's why Conan's character was Calidor. I mean, because let's be honest, you've seen that movie, you've seen Conan or seen Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie. He's a fancy dressed Conan. Calidor is Conan.
Never saw it.
You never saw Red Sonja with Bridget Wilson?
No, I did. I did see Red Sonja
I mean, Calidor is Conan.
once.
Multiple times because I liked Red Sonja.
You just like Bridget Wilson.
Hey, at the time,
Bridget
you gotta
Nielsen,
admit, she was
excuse me.
cute. She was beautiful. I like Red.
You still like her?
I haven't seen it in years.
No, her.
I haven't watched it in years. I've grown it, moved on.
She's not Red Sonja no more.
No. I'm pretty sure she's dead, or she's living under a bridge.
Did she have some kind of thing with Coolio at one time?
She just ate up with a dope and.
Well, that's like the famous porn star Seika. I liked her, but now she's reformed and old as Moses and everything else.
Huh.
At the time, she was great. Time moves on. So does your
No,
likings. and
Johnny,
stuff.
she is still alive.
I'm sorry to hear that.
She is 59 years old though
And
now.
she is the crypt
How
keeper.
old?
59.
Dang, she ain't that much older than me. She was young then for an actress.
See, she ain't Red Sonja no more.
That's a glamour shot from the
But
last time I
still,
saw
that's not
Got
that.
a filter.
Yep. I dated a girl in high school that was identical. She was a young Bridget Nielsen. And she went down the same road.
She's under a bridge now.
I don't know about under a bridge, but she went down the cocaine highway. Not with me, because that ain't my thing.
Well, I think we can sit here and jabber on another.
We gotta move on to our next show.
Yeah. So, anyway, movie monsters. Norman, you got anything else to wrap up?
That was actually pretty good. I like that.
Johnny?
I'm tapped out.
Yeah. That was we have to get our tech team to rein us in on this one because we'd have kept blabbering on all night.
I know
if not. But thank you, Tyler. We appreciate the control.
This is probably our longest episode yet.
Yeah. So, anyway, Norman, how can people get in touch with us?
You can find us on Facebook under What's Really Out There. You'll find we have moderators and admin that monitor the website, our Facebook page. If you have a question, a concern, like to talk to one of us about an incident, or you just need somebody to talk to vent about something going on in your life, reach out to us. I monitor the site. Robbie monitors the site. We have admins and mods that are monitoring the site as well. We'll be there to listen, reach out to you. If you need assistance in some way, shape, or form, we'll do our best to provide it, whether it's come out there for a field investigation, talk to you via IM, phone, smoke signals, which is Johnny handles.
Yep.
We have people all over parts of the United States that if a field investigation is needed, that we can probably send some investigators to come out and help you out in your area. So you can reach us there, and also you can reach us via email, and Robbie will tell you the email.
That email is what's really out there 2022 at gmail.com. No spaces, no any kind of apostrophes or anything like that. Just what's really out there 2022 at gmail.com. If you want to, like Norman said, send us an email about something you want us to look into, a story you've got, just give it to us. We'll look into it. We'll talk about it on the show. Or if you want to send a smoke signal to Johnny, he's monitoring the horizon.
My eyes are in the sky.
Other than that, that's all I got for this time, guys.
I'm good to go too. I'm glad y'all listened with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you got any comments, please leave them in the feedback section of whatever device that you listen to us on.
Yep. And if you got an idea for a show you want us to do, just let us know. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Catch you next time.